In a courtroom heavy with silence and thick with suspense, something extraordinary happened. Something that would echo across an entire nation. A young, almost unknown judge stood face to face with the most powerful man in the country, Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso. The president had entered the courtroom not in a formal suit or traditional attire, but in his military uniform. The same uniform worn during the revolution. The same one millions had seen him in when he stood boldly for his people. To him, it wasn't just cloth. It was history. It was pride. It was identity. But the courtroom had rules, strict ones. And the young judge, barely in his early 30s, stood up, his voice steady but slightly trembling. He raised the gavel and declared, "Mr. Traoré, for breaching courtroom dress code, I am issuing a fine of 10,000 CFA. For a moment, the world stood still. Gasps echoed through the wooden walls. Journalists froze mid-note. Guards tightened their grip on rifles. Ordinary citizens shifted in disbelief. Did he just fine the president? Was this a mistake? Was the judge insane or incredibly brave? And the president? He didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't even frown. He stood tall, shoulders squared, eyes calm, then slowly reached for his wallet. Without a word, he pulled out a crisp 10,000 CFA note, walked up to the clerk, and gently placed it on the desk. No resistance, no speech, no drama, just dignity. The silence that followed was louder than any shouting. The judge's hands trembled slightly as he sat down, stunned not by his own decision, but by the quiet lesson he had just received. He had expected backlash, anger, maybe even political consequences. But instead, he had witnessed a powerful truth. True power doesn't scream. It listens. True dignity doesn't fight back. It stands taller. Within hours, videos of the moment flooded social media. By the sixth day, it had become more than just news. It had become a symbol of equality, of humility, of the kind of leadership that doesn't need to demand respect because it already commands it. People across the country whispered about it in cafes, replayed it in homes, debated it on street corners. Some called it bold, others called it foolish. But all agreed it was unforgettable. In that courtroom, a young judge dared to apply the law to the highest office in the land. But it was the president's response that taught the nation what real leadership looks like. And for a brief, shining moment, the soul of a nation stood still, not in fear, but in respect. It started with a courtroom decision, a moment so unexpected, it stunned a nation. But what followed wasn't just headlines or political debates. It was a movement, a lesson, a storm. The video of the fine spread like wildfire. But it wasn't the judge's boldness that captivated people. It was the president's silence, his humility, his restraint. He's not a dictator. One elderly woman whispered into a street reporter's mic. He's a servant. But behind locked doors and closed curtains, powerful forces stirred. This wasn't just a courtroom fine anymore. It was the spark that would ignite a week of fire. That evening, in a modest apartment, Judge Alan Nikama sat alone, the glow of his phone illuminating his face. Messages poured in nonstop. Journalists, politicians, friends, strangers. Some called him brave. Others called him reckless. But none of that mattered now. He had been crying, not out of fear nor guilt, but because of what happened as he left the courtroom. 2 children had stopped him, a boy and a girl, no older than 10. The boy looked up at him and asked, "Sir, are you the one who fined our president?" Alan knelt, unsure what was coming. The girl held out a piece of paper, a hand-drawn sketch. 2 stick figures, one in a judge's robe, the other in a soldier's uniform. Above it, the words, "2 men who love Burkina Faso." And that was it. Alan broke. It was never about rules or punishments or uniforms. It was about something much deeper. The next morning, the judge received a personal invitation from the president himself. No media, no entourage, just a small office, a pot of tea, a moment frozen in time. As Judge Alan entered, his heart pounded. He expected fury. Instead, President Ibrahim Traoré stood up, smiled gently, and extended his hand. "Sit," he said calmly. "Let's talk." A pause. Then, you did your duty. You honored the law. That means you honored the people. And for that, I respect you. Alan's voice cracked. But I embarrassed you. In front of the nation. Traoré sipped his tea. No, he replied softly. You reminded the nation that no one stands above justice. Not even me. Alan asked, almost in a whisper. Then why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you defend yourself? The answer was like thunder, calm and controlled. Because real strength doesn't shout. It listens. The meeting lasted just 30 minutes. But its ripple would shake the entire country. The next day, a thin envelope appeared on the courthouse steps. No name. No return address. Just the faint scent of smoke. Inside, a photograph of Judge Allen leaving the president's office. On the back, written in red ink, Justice is watching you. Stay silent. A warning? A threat? He contacted the police. Probably political noise, they told him. Don't engage. But then came the protests. Not angry, not violent, just confused. Dozens gathered outside the courthouse holding signs. Why find the man who protects us? The judge must speak. Then a girl, barely 12, stepped forward. Her voice trembled, but her words cut deep. My father was saved by that uniform. My school is safe because of that man. She paused, looked toward the palace, and said, If wearing that uniform is wrong, then I don't want to be right. Applause erupted. But behind closed doors, something darker was forming. By the fifth day, clouds rolled over Ouagadougou like bruises in the sky. Inside the presidential residence, Traoré stood silently in front of an old wooden coat hook. Hanging there, the military uniform that had caused everything. He stared at it for a long time. He remembered his first mission, the gunfire, the fear, the moment he swore to protect, not rule. That uniform carried stories of struggle, of blood, of unbreakable hope. He reached out, brushing the fabric with his fingers, and then walked away. That night, the courthouse was vandalized. Red spray paint, crude and furious, across the wall. Uniforms don't rule justice. Outrage followed. Some called it rebellion. Others feared civil unrest. President Traoré? Still silent, but not idle. The next morning, Judge Allen received another envelope, sealed with gold wax. It was warm to the touch. Inside, a handwritten note. To Allah, thank you for reminding this nation what justice should look like. You did not humiliate me. You honored me. But now, I must take a step of my own. Tonight, I will take off my uniform. Not in shame, in reverence. For the next 7 days, I will wear the clothes of my people, farmer, miner, teacher, merchant. Because before I became president, I was one of them. And I still am. Let the people see their leader, not the soldier, but the man. That is my true uniform now. With honor. Ibrahim Traoré. Alan wept. Not because of the pressure, the threats, or the fear. But because in that moment, he understood something rare. The true face of leadership isn't power. It's humility. Day 6. As the sun rose over the dusty plains, whispers swept through the streets. The president had been spotted, not in his office, not behind walls, but in the fields. Wearing worn-out jeans and a tattered brown shirt, he dug irrigation trenches alongside local farmers. No cameras, no bodyguards, no speeches, just dirt under his nails and sweat on his brow. Didn't recognize him at first, said old Papa Ibra, a local farmer. But the way he worked, the way he listened, that's when I knew. Later that day, he was seen at a small rural school, helping repair desks. Children giggled, tugged at his sleeves, and called him Unle Ibrahim. Photos, snapped secretly, flooded the internet. He's with us, one post read. Our president is one of us. But far from the sunshine and hope, in a shadowy office downtown, someone whispered into a phone. He's becoming too powerful without needing power. We must act. Now, that night, 3 men met in a shuttered cafe. What they planned would decide the fate of a nation. The lights were off, curtains drawn. A quiet backroom of a closed cafe turned into the war room for a whispering rebellion. Inside sat three men: a businessman, a retired officer, and a bitter ex-politician with nothing left to lose. "He's rewriting the narrative," the officer muttered, voice low and sharp. No military parades. No power plays. Just silence. Humility. "It's dangerous." The politician slammed his fist on the table. "That fine was supposed to humiliate him," he spat. "Instead, it sanctified him. People aren't mocking him. They're weeping for him." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the businessman leaned in, voice cold. "We'll remind the nation he's still a soldier. Still a threat. Quietly. Discreetly." But what they didn't know, outside the cafe, a young waiter had been listening. He said nothing, moved like a ghost, then ran, straight to the only place he believed was still untouched by shadows. The courtroom. He found Judge Alan Nickema just as he was leaving, breathless, pale, terrified. "They're planning something," he gasped. "Before the weekend. They want to take him down." Alan's face turned stone white. What began as a courtroom fine was spiraling into a full-blown firestorm. Day 7 began not with explosions, but with silence. No soldiers. No statements. Just whispers. And then, in a small schoolhouse near Bobo de Lasso, a moment of truth unfolded. A 9-year-old girl named Amamira stood on a wobbly plastic chair in front of her classmates. Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched a radio mic. Her father had died 2 years ago. A soldier in the same uniform Ibrahim Traoré had been fined for wearing. Her voice cracked as she said, "President Ibrahim wears that uniform because of people like my papa, people who gave everything. If that's wrong, then I don't understand the world anymore." Silence. Then tears. A teacher filmed it. By noon, the video had gone viral. By sunset, it was on the desk of one of the plotters. The old politician stared at the screen, hands trembling. This wasn't supposed to happen. But their plan was already in motion. That evening, 3 major news platforms released a coordinated breaking alert. It accused President Traoré of violating national security protocol, claimed he had misused funds to stage his week among the people. Suggested judges had been silenced behind the scenes. No sources, no facts, just shadows. The impact was immediate. Doubt crept in. At a market, a man asked, "But how do we know it's false?" A woman beside him whispered, "When has he ever lied to us?" The nation trembled. Inside the courthouse, Judge Allen watched the smear unfold on screen. He remembered Amamira's voice, the letter, the president's hands, caked in farm dirt. This wasn't politics anymore. This was a war on truth. He marched straight to the National Broadcast Center. "I want to speak," he told the director. "About what?" the man asked. Allen's reply, "About a man who took off his uniform and wore our pain instead." That night, the judge went live on national television. He didn't defend President Traoré. He simply told the story of justice, of silence, of sacrifice. People across the country leaned into their screens and wept. But the enemies, they weren't finished. Now they were desperate. Early morning, day 7. President Ibrahim Traoré stood before a mirror, wearing a plain shirt, old trousers, no medals, no ranks. He looked older, not tired, but fuller. Then a knock. It was Judge Allen. Without a word, Ibrahim rolled up his sleeve, revealing a scar across his shoulder. "This," he said, "was from the night I helped evacuate a village under attack. No cameras, no medals, just fire. I was a soldier. That's all." He looked into Alan's eyes, steady and unshaken. "Do you know why I still wear the uniform? Not for pride, but for the ones who never made it home." Alan's voice shook. "They tried to break you." Ibrahim nodded slowly. "Let them try. I won't raise my voice. I'll raise my people." Then the call came. A child had collapsed near the courthouse. It was Amamira. She had walked for hours through the heat with a letter for the president. But hunger and exhaustion had overcome her. President Traoré didn't hesitate. No guards. No motorcade. He ran, through dusty streets, past traffic, bareheaded in the blazing sun. People watched in stunned silence. The president was running. Not for a vote. Not for a photo. For a child. He found her lying near the courthouse steps. Dust clung to her dress. Her tiny fingers clutched a wrinkled envelope. He knelt beside her, lifted her into his arms, and held her close. As medics arrived, he opened the letter. Inside, written in shaky handwriting, "Dear President, my papa wore a uniform like yours. Thank you for remembering him. Please don't take it off forever. Some of us still need to see it. Amamira." And there, in that quiet moment beneath a fading sun, a president knelt not as a ruler, but as a reminder of what it means to serve. On a thin hospital bed, beneath dim lights and hushed prayers, a little girl lay still, her small chest rising gently with each breath. Amamira had made it through, weakened by the journey, but alive. Doctors had given her water and rest. She was safe. But beside her sat a man known across the world for his strength. And now, for the first time, he wept. President Ibrahim Traoré held her hand in silence. A single tear slid down his cheek. Amamira opened her eyes slightly, her voice barely a whisper. "My letter." He smiled softly and squeezed her hand. "You brought it far enough. I'll carry it the rest of the way." He opened the note, written in crayon on a torn sheet of notebook paper, and read aloud. "Dear President, thank you for showing us that wearing a uniform doesn't mean forgetting who we are. My papa is proud of you. I know it." By the time he finished reading, the nurse was crying. The doctor wiped his eyes. Even the soldier guarding the door stood with his head bowed. Outside, a crowd had gathered, not to protest, but to pray. Candles flickered in the breeze. And in that sacred moment, Ibrahim wasn't a president. He was a father, a brother, a soul. And far away, in a shadowed room, the very men who plotted his fall realized something terrifying. They hadn't broken him. They had made him unstoppable. The next morning, something no one expected happened. The three conspirators, the ex-politician, the retired officer, the bitter businessman, were summoned to the National Courthouse. Not in handcuffs, but to speak. Judge Alan Nikama stood before them, and one question echoed through the hall. "Do you regret it?" Silence fell like a curtain. The officer looked away. The businessman sighed. But the ex-politician stood trembling. "I lost everything," he said softly, "and I blamed him for it. But this week, I saw a man walk through fire without lighting a single match. I'm sorry, Mr. President." The room was still. And for the first time in 7 days, there were no chants, no cries. Just breathless unity. Then an image spread across the country like sunrise. President Traoré sitting beside Amamira, reading her a bedtime story. No uniform, no garfs, no taitas. Just a man, a symbol, a heart. The people didn't need medals to believe in him anymore. They only needed his love. That evening, Ibrahim returned home. His week-long journey had ended. His military uniform hung untouched on a chair. He stared at it, not with pride, but with memory. Then, gently he put it on. Not to reclaim power, not for performance, but because he had one last thing to say. That night, the nation tuned in. Ibrahim stood before them in the same uniform that once sparked a courtroom gasp. His voice was soft, but unshakable. "I wore this not to separate myself from you, but because I never left you." He paused. "This week, a child reminded me, symbols matter, but actions matter more. So whether in uniform, in plain clothes, or in silence, I will serve you, always." He looked directly into the camera. "I do not lead from above. I walk beside you." Across the nation, tears flowed. Even the skeptics wept. Because this wasn't about politics anymore. It was about something sacred, faith, restored. The next morning, a beautiful phenomenon spread like wildfire. From villages to cities, people began wearing army green shirts, homemade badges, and camouflage scarves. Not to fight, not to rebel, but to honor. Market women, farmers, school children, wearing the symbol of a man who stood with them, not above them. One image captured it best. An old man in bobo de lasso, his shirt patched and frayed. When asked why he wore it, he smiled. If my president is fined for standing with us, then let them fine me too. That photo was shared across Africa and beyond. A wave of love, a sea of truth. Meanwhile, Judge Allen quietly delivered a handwritten note to the presidency. It read only, "You already paid it." In time, Amamira's strength returned faster than doctors believed possible. When asked what gave her hope, she smiled. He came. She was later invited to the palace, not for cameras, not for media, just for tea. She and Ibrahim sat beneath a quiet tree in the garden. No guards, no speeches, just a leader and a little girl. She handed him a drawing, a soldier standing hand in hand with smiling children. Above it she'd written, "Uniform or not, we see your heart." He framed it. That same night, Ibrahim met with his council. He made a decision no one expected. From today, I will no longer wear the uniform at official ceremonies. Let it belong to the people now. Silence. And then tears. Because power hadn't stepped down. It had risen. Exactly 7 days had passed. A week since a courtroom gasp. Since a fine became a flame. Since a leader became a legend. President Traoré stood before a small crowd of widows, orphans, and soldiers' families. In plain clothes, he spoke softly. "I once believed this uniform gave me strength. But I was wrong. You give me strength." He looked at Amamira, laughing now with other children nearby. "This week taught me that dignity isn't in fabric. It's in sacrifice. It's in standing, even when misunderstood. It's in choosing peace over pride." He stepped down from the podium. No fanfare. No escort. Just a man, walking with his people. And as the sun set gently over Burkina Faso, no one feared the dark. They felt seen. They felt safe. They felt whole. If your eyes feel heavy, if your heart feels full, you're not alone. Because this story, though crafted with fiction, holds a truth we all long for. That the greatest leaders are not built by law. They're built by love. Dove, if this story touched you, tell us below, what moment moved you the most? Speech balloon, leave a comment. Red heart like this video if it made you feel something. Bell and subscribe, because on this channel, we don't just tell stories. We build bridges between hearts. Let's keep walking together. For truth, for dignity, and for each other. Thank you for watching.